Hello YouTube, I'm Toby and today we're taking a look at the IBM X60s. Now as you may have guessed, this right here is the X60s, and the S pretty much just means that it's the slim version of the X60. Now before we start powering on this system, let's take a quick look at what it actually looks like. Alright, so this is the top of the X60s. We've got some very small bezels right here, but the computer in general is very small. As you can see, this is my hand right here, so it's a very small computer, and right down here in the corner we have IBM and Thinkpad. If you look up here, we have our battery, our charging, and our sleep indicator. Now on the back there isn't really much other than the extended battery. Now this is the left side of the computer. We have a infrared transmitter, I believe it is. We have two USB ports. I don't really know what speed these are. We have a headphone jack, a mic jack, and I believe this right here is where the hard drive goes. We also have a modem jack and our power input, and of course a Kelsington lock. On the other side of the computer we can see our exhaust vent, another USB port, a VGA output, Ethernet jack, we have an expansion card and an SD slot. And on the front we pretty much just have the little unlock button right there. Now on the bottom right here we can see how big the extended battery actually is. This right there is the actual size of the regular battery, and then we have this entire extended tube on it, which is awesome. We also have a little docking port connector right here. I don't have the docking port for it, sadly enough, but that's pretty much everything there is from the bottom. So if we start from the top right here, we have our little light, and we have our little lock hooks right here. Don't know much about the screen yet. And down here we have our keyboard. It's a very compact keyboard. You can see they use pretty much all the space. There's no trackpad on here, but I assume there wasn't room for one. Up here we have our volume buttons, our ThinkPad button, and the power button, and of course the keyboard. And the little mouse trackpad, well, the little red dot right here, track point I believe it's called, is very worn. Keys in general are very worn. They could use a little cleaning, I guess. We have a fingerprint scanner right here as well. It's kind of cool. Right down here we have the IBM Thinkpad logo. And over here we have Centrino Duo processor. It's probably a dual core in here actually, and we are probably running a Windows XP, although it's Vista capable. Something else up here is right next to the X60s. It actually says Lenovo, so this may have been in the transition period from when Lenovo took over IBM's ThinkPad market. Alright, so I've hooked it up to power, and the green LED for power connection is lighting up, but the battery is blinking orange, so I'm assuming that the battery is pretty much dead on this one. Now let's try and turn it on. And it appears to be running Windows XP. That's kind of cool. Oh. Blue screen of death. That's not good. Alright, so the system kept running in a blue screen loop, so I decided to go into rescue and recovery. And it appears that the hard disk may not actually be detected, since it doesn't know the capacity or what's left on the hard disk, so we may actually have a hard disk issue. But while we're in here, I think it's nice to point out that this thing has just short of 1 GB of RAM, and it's running an Intel Core Duo CPU at 1.6 gigahertz. So not too bad actually, but we may actually have to find a new hard disk for this system. Alright, so as it turns out, the computer just does not want to start up. Maybe we have some bad files on the hard disk, but it does seem like it is initializing the hard disk. It just can't read it and it can't access it. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna, well, shut the system off, and then we're pretty much just gonna tear it apart just to see if we can upgrade a few parts and clean it out a little bit. Now I thought we had one stick with 1 GB RAM, but we actually have two sticks of 512 MB RAM in this system, so I may actually have some 1 GB sticks of this kind laying around, so hopefully we can actually upgrade this system. Now I got the hard drive out as well. It's a 5400 RPM hard disk, 60 gigabytes of storage. I actually thought this would be 40, so 60 is also nice. And it's got the SATA connection, so I will be able to upgrade this. Alright, so earlier I was actually wondering where the speaker was, and it turns out it's actually right here on the bottom next to the Wi-Fi switch right here. So I assume there wasn't enough room for it on top, but top is always better than bottom, I guess. So, but as long as it works, I don't care. And we got the keyboard and top bezel off, revealing our small motherboard and the small fan up here. Now I'm going to continue taking this apart. I'm going to blow it free of dust, and I'm going to clean out the thermal paste on the processor and replace it, of course. I got the fan out, and I'm not sure how well you can tell, but there's a lot of dust in the heatsink. I think only 2/3, maybe even just half the heatsink is actually available for cooling. So it was a good thing I took this thing apart. Although the shield is held on by these little bending metallic straps, so you're probably not going to be able to clean this out too much, otherwise you might end up damaging the shield itself. Personally, I prefer screws, but there's not much you can do about this kind of design. It's a poor design, but I guess it works. I also managed to expose our two main heat producing chips in here. We have a L2400 CPU right here. Let's see what it says down here. There's a little latch here I can pull up. 1.66 gigahertz, 2 megabytes of cache. Yeah, that's pretty much all it says, other than the L2400. And over here we have some type of, I can't see what that says, but there's an I on there. It's some kind of Intel chip. It may be the graphics processor, but I am not entirely sure about that. But I'm gonna start cleaning all these components out, and we can put the whole thing back together again. Alright, so the computer is almost entirely reassembled now. I found two 1 GB sticks that seem to fit in here, so hopefully we now have 2 gigabytes in the system. I actually want to try the old hard disk again in here just to see if maybe disassembling helped something, but probably didn't. But let's just try the old hard disk one more time. Yeah, crashed again. Let's see if it'll actually detect the new RAM sticks. I'll just go into the rescue and recovery right here. So some good news and some bad news. The good news is that it's detecting the RAM. We now have 2038 megabytes, roughly 2 gigabytes, but it's still not detecting the hard disk. So what I'm gonna try and do right now is create a bootable media with Ubuntu on it, and see if it's just a bad Windows. Well, maybe we have some ghost code in the operating system, but let's try the Linux first. Alright, so the Ubuntu installed, but it's been stuck like this for about 15 minutes now after I restarted it. So there may actually be something wrong with the hard disk, so I'm gonna take the old hard disk out and switch it out with a new one. Here's the old hard disk. It's a little bit warm, and this is the new one. I still think this is a 5400 RPM one, but this one is 250 gigabytes, so it will boost storage quite a bit. But let's shove it in and try again. And we're now installing Ubuntu on the new hard disk. Fingers crossed, hope this thing works this time. Alright, so situational update on the X60s. I still haven't gotten it to boot in. I had it standing all night trying to boot loop, but nothing helped. Tried clearing the CMOS battery. I've even put the old hard drive back in there, but it doesn't really seem like anything's helping. I'm not really sure what to do about it right now. I know it will boot from a USB drive. I tried the Ubuntu Linux distribution, just booting it from the USB drive, and it worked fine. but whenever I go back to try with the hard drive, it doesn't work. Which is actually a problem I've never had before, so I am actually, well, I'm kind of annoyed and pissed off, and yet still very intrigued about this problem, because it's kind of interesting actually.
At last there's some progress in this whole ordeal. I got Windows, Linux Mint to boot on the system. I'm not sure why Windows XP decided to crap out and why Ubuntu Linux wouldn't work. It may have something to do with the BIOS, or maybe there's another incompatibility somewhere, but I now have Linux Mint working. Alright, so I've been using this computer for most of the day so far. I've had to admit that the battery is pretty much dead. It's been hovering between 0 and 2% all day, so definitely dead battery. Now I quickly wanted to touch on some of the specs of this computer. The CPU, as we know, is the L2400 Mobile Core Duo chip, and as I already told you, it's dual core clocked at 1.66 GHz. It's got a 32-bit instruction set and a very low TDP of a mere, what was that, 15 watts, so it's a very efficient chip. And in case you were wondering, it's a 65 nanometer architecture. Now RAM wise, as you know, it came with 1 GB and I put that up to 2. From what I can gather, the chipset in this thing only supports up to 4 GB. Once again, that's both the chipset and the 32-bit instruction set, limiting it to, well, a mere 4 GB of RAM. Now the fact that this can use just 4 GB is not really that much of an issue. This is pretty much just a work machine. I would not recommend using this for gaming, so work related only, which it actually does quite well, I'll have to say. I've been writing some documents. I've actually written a little bit on here, done some research. It is a little bit slow on the internet, but for what it is, it's actually very, very good at it. The display on this thing is, what was that, 12.1 inch in diameter, and the aspect ratio is 4:3. The resolution is 1024 by 768. I couldn't quite get a good feeling on what the integrated graphics on this thing is, whether it's the Intel GMA 950 or the 945 Express. And from what I could gather, this machine is from 2006. Now the machine is very light. I mean, if you put this in your backpack, you would not notice it was there at all. And with the Linux distro, the operating system also feels very light. It's not very snappy, but it's fast enough that it actually is still useful in 2017. Although 2017 is almost over, but I would still think this is good in 2018 actually. Given that you're just going to use it for maybe light schoolwork, writing some homework, emails, live research, all that good stuff. Now before we end this video, I quickly wanted to show you the load time on certain web pages. So let's get to it. Alright, so first off, let's open the browser. Now this may actually take a while, and while it's loading, I could also tell that this thing takes quite a while to load up on startup. It isn't something I don't think an SSD or a faster hard disk could help with, but for what it is, it's doing okay. Alright, so let's try and load up CNN. It's quite a heavy website even for older systems. And it's almost there. Alright, it actually didn't take as long as oh, it's actually still loading, but it's not as long as you might fear it to be. Let's try going on YouTube. Alright, so now we're on YouTube. And we're in. That's actually still not that bad. Let's try to play a video. We'll just take the first one here, which is the Deadpool wet teaser. Let's see what it does, if it'll even load it. And we've got sound. Alright, let's see what resolution we're running at. We're running at 360p. Let's try and bump that up to 480.
See if that'll do anything good for us. Alright, so at 480, or see here, let's see, what was it? Yeah, at 480 it's lagging a little bit and it's slowing down sometimes. So let's go back to 360. This seemed to be the sweet spot for this system. Now next test, let's try and go full screen. Alright, it's actually not doing too bad. That's kind of cool. Alright, so the final verdict on the X60s. I think it's a great computer actually. It's small, it's light, and it can still do office tasks, given that you have a little bit of patience in you. So should you buy one? Well, if you can find it cheap, it's actually a quite good deal. I know this one needs a new battery, but I think those are just what, 40 bucks out there on eBay, maybe just 20. So it's not a big investment. Now I hope you enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoyed taking this little computer apart and tinkering with it. And I hope you have a good day. Thank you very much for watching.